Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Only as Lonely, the podcast where I share my story of taking redundancy in 2009 and setting off to see some sights, take some photos, play some music and all the funny little interactions in between. It's great to have you here with me, and if you are 16 episodes in, then well done. It would appear that you are committed to seeing this through, which is brilliant. There's plenty to get through yet though. We're a long way off from finishing this adventure. Now, as always, if you want to see some of the things I describe or watch video clips or even listen to some of the music that I share in this podcast, then avoid missing out. Visit onlyaslonely.wordpress.com to immerse yourself even further in this adventure. At the time of recording this, I've got some news, dear listener. I've been contacted and advised that this podcast has indeed been rated. Oh yes, this podcast is officially in some podcast charts now. It's been recognised. I had an email to tell me that I was rated at, drumroll please, number 158. Yeah, that rating has changed. Since that first email. Yeah, it's dropped to a 210. But, considering that there are millions of podcasts out there now, that's not bad, is it? Well, you might think so, but actually, it's actually in a category called social and culture, travel and places. So it's quite a niche category in a subset category of a massively overly saturated market. But still, it's a start. So look out, Joe Rogan, because I'm coming for you. So with these heady heights of commercial success now, I haven't sold myself to the devil, but I have become a bit of a corporate hoe and agreed to play an advert. That I've got an advert of a new TV show to plug. Sounds absolutely gripping though, and if I had a TV license, I'd definitely be tuning in. Right, play it.
So I'm trying to get this kite in the air, but I must have grossly underestimated the strength of the gust, you see, because I couldn't get it up there, you see. It just wasn't working, wasn't catching. And then my son says, "Look, Dad," and I look across the field and I see this creature.
One of the most terrifying survival stories to ever be broadcast on TV.
Very traumatic just thinking about it. I was looking death in the face.
Thursday, 8 p.m.
I've never been so terrified in my life.
When Sheep Attack. Only on Channel 5, after Celebrity Bunions.
Wow, well, that sounds intense, doesn't it? I'm not really pushing for huge ratings, which is just as well. I'm crap at marketing this, and I appreciate this is just lost in a huge sea of podcasts. But, if diamonds or pearls were everywhere, then they wouldn't be such precious things, would they? So that's my pitiful excuse for this podcast. It's a rare gem, but please do me a solid.
I need a sample of your poo.
No, not like that. Listen, tell a friend, share this with someone. It might inspire them to travel, play music, take photos, or it might even give them a giggle along the way, who knows? And you will have helped to make that happen. Passing on a bit of goodness. Imagine that. Right, so the trip. I've been making my way towards Franz Joseph to climb the glacier for the past 3 days. And now I'm about to get there like some sort of bloody intrepid explorer. I've spent the night in the Wild White Stallion in a secluded spot next to Lake Maparika, and without further ado, let's go and climb a glacier, shall we? Bring your waterproofs, yeah? Let's go! September the 28th, 2009. At 7 a.m, I woke up as bright as a button. I lay there letting my eyes adjust to the light. I had an itch on my leg, then on my arm, then on my other leg, and so on and so on. Yep, I'd been eaten alive in the night and now I was scratching all over. I had to try and ignore it, as the more I thought about it, the more I would itch. I decided it was best to hit the road as soon as possible because I wasn't sure how long it would take to get to Franz Joseph, but it didn't really take long to get there at all. I parked up on the outskirts and went in search of a cooked breakfast in this small village. I couldn't see the glacier anywhere. I strolled down the main road through the village towards a cafe and saw the glacier trip office was already open, so I popped in to see if there were any more spaces. There was only one space left for the full day trip to climb the glacier. It had my name on it. It was Kismet. So I booked it and was told that I had to be back there at 8:15. So it was a good thing that I set off when I did to get to Franz Joseph. But that left 20 minutes to get some lunch, some water and breakfast. I grabbed a couple of sandwiches and for some reason I must have thought that I was heading to the Sahara. I'd left the rational, logical, thinking part of my brain behind, or maybe the bugs had eaten it in the night. Why did I think it would be a good idea to buy 3 litres of water? I have no idea. But that wasn't all. I went to the cafe and, I could have had toast. I could have had a sausage sandwich or some other reasonable sized breakfast. But no, not I. Not Dan Gallagher on This Morning where time was of the essence. No, I opted for a belly buster.
I'm lost for words. I don't know what to say.
A couple of eggs, toast, beans, pig's pudding, tomatoes. Oh, and a whole pig's worth of pork.
I'm worried. There's so much fat.
There wasn't any porcelain of the plate visible. I sat there looking at this monstrosity before me, thinking to myself that once again I had been an idiot. With only 10 minutes to eat this feast that would have fed a female pop group for a week. Still, I gave it my best. And after 10 minutes, I filled my mouth with as much as I could and got up to leave.
Fucking disgusting.
I felt a bit guilty because it looked like I hadn't actually touched it. So on to the tourist office with 3 litres of water weighing down my backpack. I was given waterproof trousers, socks and boots with crampons. I was offered a waterproof jacket, but I'd already got one, so I didn't see the point. We all got ready and jumped onto the coach. There I got chatting to a fellow Brit, a young lady called Susie, who was also travelling on her own for a couple of weeks. She was pretty chilled out and easy to get on with. We chatted about what we did back home and where we travelled to as we headed to the glacier on the coach. From the drop-off point, we had a walk through some rainforest towards the glacier that wasn't yet in view. After a short while, we emerged from the tree line, and there it was. Quite the sight. Imagine standing in a canyon on what looked like a dried-up riverbed, with large rocks scattered and strewn across this large expanse that looked as though it had been carved through the rock by giants. Huge rock faces overlooked us either side, and in front of us, there it was, the glacier. I didn't really know what to expect before, so it was interesting to see this huge ice slide coming down the canyon in front of us. In the distance, it raised up to above the rock faces either side of it. It was white/light blue on the surface, but it was possible to see traces of deep, rich blue, probably from cuts and fractures within the glacier, that revealed glimpses of the deeper ice and compacted snow. Now, if my memory serves me right, here's some facts that I seem to vaguely recall about the glacier. The Franz Joseph Glacier, also known as Kai-Romata Ohini-Hukateri, is a 12km/7.5 mile long temperate maritime glacier. I seem to recall that it descends from the Southern Alps to less than 300 metres, that's approximately 980 feet, above sea level. And it's named after Emperor Franz Joseph I of Austria, if my memory serves me right. There's a river that emerges from the glacier terminal called the Weiho River. The snowfield at the top of the glacier is over 2,500 metres or 8,200 feet above sea level, and 20 square kilometres or 7.7 square miles in area, so it's huge. It feeds large amounts of compacted snow into a steep and narrow valley which drops quickly to very low altitudes. The glacier descends to just 300 metres, that's 980 feet, above sea level in just 11 kilometres. That's 6.8 miles. It's unusual for a glacier to share a valley with a temperate rainforest. Now, during the last ice age, which was approximately 18,000 years ago, the ice extended beyond the coastline, which is currently 12 miles from the glacier. But as the ice retreated, it created much of the topography and landscape now evident in the local vicinity. The glacier has a cyclic pattern of advance and retreat, depending on whether there are higher amounts of rainfall or snow at the top. But Franz Joseph behaves differently to other glaciers and may in fact advance while others retreat. And this is due to that steep incline I remembered earlier on. Not bad from memory, is it? It's the third most visited site in New Zealand, and I've recently found out that you can't actually do walks up the glacier anymore after the terminal face collapsed in 2012. So you're going to get an insight into something that, as it stands, at the time of recording this, can't be done by tourists. Now, it looked like we were almost there, but it was actually an optical illusion because there was no point of reference. There was nothing to refer to for scale. You had no way of being able to tell the sheer size of this huge, ever-changing, gigantic spectacle. This was pointed out by a Kiwi guide who seemed to have quite the monotone voice. He kind of gave the impression that he'd done this speech several hundred times before and was tired of regurgitating the same facts and figures day in, day out to gormless tourists. His enthusiasm was as dishevelled as the floppy hat that he was wearing. But as pointed out by the guide, it looked like we were nearly there, but we were actually 2.5 kilometres, which is 1.5 miles, away from the ice. And that fact was delivered by the Kiwi guide in the same enthusiasm and seriousness as someone telling a hamster owner that they've been reported to the RSPCA for kicking the hamster ball with the hamster in it. But it still got some oohs and ahs from the group. We walked over the rock-strewn surface of the canyon, trying to comprehend the sheer size of this thing and trying to make out if some of the dots visible on the glacier were other people climbing. 2.5 kilometres later, we reached the terminal face, a towering elevation of slowly thawing ice, always in motion, at a pace impossible to see. Here the ice was the colour of concrete, and it was hard to decipher if there were loose bits of ice or gravel sprinkled over the surface. Other members of the tour's staff, identifiable by their orange tops, had been cutting out steps in the ice. The climb was initially surprisingly steep. No wonder there was a rope to hold onto as you started to climb this steep, ever-melting stairway. But before making that climb, we donned the crampons, split up into two groups, and fortunately, the other group left with their deflated, monotone, existential crisis pondering, floppy-hatted Kiwi guide. And the rest of us, a group of about 8 or 9, fortunately had an English guy called Nick who actually was enthusiastic about the tour. We dug our crampons into the ice as we clambered up the freshly carved steps, and at this point I realised that I had been a total idiot carrying 3 litres of water on my back. I shouldn't really be complaining. As evidenced in Kaikoura, I am an extreme endurance Special Armed Forces legend wannabe who has spent the last 9 years in the guise of a desk-based insurance claims handler yet to realise my full potential. I should laugh in the face of any physical endurance with 3 litres of water on my back. In fact, I've let the side down and I should have been carrying one of those large water containers, you know, the ones that you normally have in a water cooler. We proceeded to make our way over edges, through valleys, over gaps and upwards towards the peak of our climb, which would be about midway up the glacier. It was strange to think that the bottom would not look exactly the same when we return, even though it'll only be a relatively short time frame. The ice was a deep, rich blue in the crevices and cracks. The ice was often jagged, sometimes smooth, but it was beautiful. And although we were now on the glacier, it was still difficult to get a sense of perspective. Sometimes you'd see what you think was a person as a dot in the distance as they emerged out of one crevice and clambered over into another one. There was a constant sound of running water as the ice continued to shift and thaw underneath us. I stayed with Susie for a while and we took our time making our way traversing the glacier. Sometimes Nick the guide would stop, take hold of his ice pick and start to cut steps into the ice. But I also think that sometimes it was really a delaying tactic, because I sometimes think afterwards, was that really necessary? That's a flat piece of ice there he's just chipped away at. Is he just, trying to slow us down? We would stop for rests and I got my camera out to shoot the glacier. I saw a guy with a very impressive beard taking photos. His beard commanded respect and had the rustic quality belonging to a country blues club in the Midwest. It wasn't until the group stopped and Nick started telling us stuff that I realised that this guy and his girlfriend were English too, Londoners. I started chatting to Annabelle first. I think I cracked some sort of bad joke, who would have thought. Then she introduced me to a photographer boyfriend, James. We started talking photography and suddenly poor Susie was left to it. James was a fellow SLR brother, but his camera was much more impressive than my modest entry-level SLR. He was an actual professional photographer, so this was a great opportunity to be inspired and see if I could learn from him. Straight away, I had a really good vibe with these guys. You know when you just click with someone? They had a lovely energy about them, and I instantly knew that I would get on well with them. For the rest of the glacier climb, I'd be chatting to Annabelle and James. We were at the back of the group because we were taking pictures every now and again. It's often the way. The photographers will just linger at the back, slow everyone else down. I'd be taking a shot, then James would see what I was shooting and come and take the same shots of the same view, and vice versa. We soon had to put our cameras away though. We'd been told that there would probably be rain, hence the need for waterproofs. Then Nick shouted, "Here comes the rain!" I turned and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. We looked down the valley towards the distant rainforest we'd emerged from a couple of hours earlier. But now the rainforest couldn't be seen. It had been enveloped by what looked like a thick, dark, grey wall that was bearing down towards us at pace. It didn't look like mist or fog. It looked almost solid. It was like something out of a Lord of the Rings or some other sort of fantasy film. It just didn't seem real, coming up this canyon towards us. This was a ferocious downpour like nothing I'd ever experienced before. "Shit!" I said, panicking to get my camera into my backpack, the camera having its own little compartment at the bottom with lenses. Nick then decided to drop in a little fact that the Franz Joseph area can get London's annual rainfall in a day. Yeah, in a day. A bloody day. England, right, is known for its shit weather. So imagine that amount of annual shit weather in a single day. We were about to be hit with about 3 months' worth of London rain. Fortunately, my camera bag was showerproof and I had my own waterproof jacket on along with the waterproof trousers that the tour operator had lent us. And when it reached us, it was loud. Not only from the onslaught of a million percussive beats of raindrops on the ice all around us, but also hitting the waterproof jackets and hoods of everyone in the group. And it wasn't like sporadic and erratic drops like a normal, earthly rain shower that you'd expect. This was a barrage of water, constant, unrelenting. It was like standing under a shower head. We were then told by Nick that the guides are also usually given waterproof gear by manufacturers like North Face and whatever to test whether their gear is actually waterproof. And many so-called waterproof jackets are actually not up to the job. I then questioned my own jacket, and it wasn't long before I found out as soon as I felt the dampness seeping through. This was rain like nothing I've ever seen or experienced before. It was tempestuous, it was ferocious. Sound like Mike Tyson.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious.
You get the impression. I'm trying to use language here. Got 2 Bs, GCSE English, so I don't want to, not flexing or anything. Don't want to show off, but I'm trying to use English language.
I broke my back.
What do you mean by that?
My back is broken.
What, a vertebrae or what portion?
Spinal.
We pressed on, snaking our way up the glacier, rising and falling from one crevice to the next, at times squeezing through tight gaps that would not be good for anyone who was claustrophobic or, overweight. Sometimes we needed ropes to climb up steep faces, and I was enjoying it, apart from feeling pretty damp. We reached the furthest point of our climb for the day, an island of gravel on a sea of... Well, it's like gravel, it's like rocks, like an island of rocks on a sea of ice. And after a short break, we started to head back down. In between showers, we'd stop for lunch. My 2 sandwiches and sips of water, fortunately lightening the load by not very much at all. 3 litres of water, man. Idiot. Water seemed to sum up the day. Not only had I bloody climbed a glacier with a stupid amount of water on my back, I'd also been absolutely saturated from 6 months of London rain. But I was glad to be heading back now. It felt like I was getting blisters on my feet in these borrowed boots. The climb on the glacier wasn't as physically demanding as I expected it would be, that's probably why I brought the 3 litres. I was expecting a real physical challenge here. I was still feeling tired though. But I felt fortunate to have been able to secure that last spot as we made our way back to the coach. I just climbed a glacier. Pretty spectacular. On reflection now, and knowing that people haven't been able to do that same thing since 2012, I guess it makes it more special now. With uncomfortable steps and blistered feet across the rocky terrain towards the rainforest, I had a great conversation with James about all sorts of stuff. A really easy guy to talk to, really friendly guy, good banter. When the coach dropped us off in town, I agreed to meet Susie later in a bar and go and see the glowworms with her and her friend. In the meantime, James, Annabelle and I decided to grab a coffee. In a nearby coffee shop, whilst we were chatting over coffee, I decided to check what shots I'd taken. I was in the habit of regularly checking my pictures and deleting any crap shots so that I could free up space on the memory card. I opened the backpack compartment at the bottom containing my camera, and then I was hit by the horrible, gut-wrenching feeling of a horrible discovery. My backpack was shower-proof, but that biblical drowning on the glacier, that was no shower. It wasn't just my waterproof jacket that had let water through. My camera and all my camera equipment was soaked. Fuck! I panicked and grabbed some serviettes, trying to dry the equipment the best I could. The camera wasn't working properly, and I started to wonder if I'd be able to bite the bullet and, buy a new SLR body. James said that the camera would be more resilient than I thought, but it didn't ease my mind at all. He always kept his camera in a plastic bag, just in case this sort of thing happened. And it's that wisdom of an experienced photographer that I didn't have. I was some way behind him in that respect, but I was going to find out the hard way now. What am I going to do? I thought. I can't have no camera at all. I must have a camera. This is a photography trip. Photography is a huge part of this trip. It's weird, but the prospect of not having a camera was like losing a limb to me. Half of the enjoyment of what I was doing was being able to capture these moments forever. James continued to assure me that I might be surprised that the camera will be more resilient than I thought. And then something strange happened. I took a deep breath. I sat back, had a sip of coffee. The panic faded, and I found myself in a state of mind where I thought that I would somehow have to deal with it. I didn't know how, but I would. If it meant buying a new camera body, then so be it. I'd have to head to the next big city or town, find a camera shop and buy a new camera body. If my camera doesn't dry out and start working, that was the only other option. It was a very matter-of-fact approach and not a feeling that I was familiar with. Very pragmatic, almost stoic. Don't get me wrong, I was a bit perturbed by this, but I was still able to have a giggle with James and Annabelle. Was this some sort of personal growth for me? A new way of handling difficult situations? My newfound fellow glacier climbing, photo snapping pommy friends recommended a site for camper vans that they had stopped at, and they gave me directions to it. It wasn't very far. So I went back to the Wild White Stallion and made my way to the site. I ended up on the pitch next to their camper van, which was a Ford Transit, and much smaller than the absolute unit that I was driving. I tried the camera, but it was still not working. I'd wiped all of the water off that I could, but I needed now to somehow dry it out. So, as I was on a site and connected to power, I put the heating on and left the camera out near the heating vent to let the warm air blow on it. After a shower, a change of clothes, I headed to the Blue Ice Bar to meet Susie and her friend Louise. I ended up playing pool with a bunch of Irish lads in there. It was a good crack.
Would you like to do me challenge there, would you? You wouldn't.
It was a nice evening with good, friendly company. Later, James and Annabelle joined us, and as a group, we headed off to find the glowworms that were a short walk away. After walking down the quiet road, we saw the sign for the glowworms pointing into some dark woods. We precariously walked down the track. I had fun hiding and jumping out on the girls, making them scream. Deeper and deeper we headed into the dark, and then we'd find ourselves turning off our torches, looking into the bushes to see if we could see any glowworms. Is that something there? Where? There. No. Let's move on. That was the gist of the conversations between the screams of the jittery girls whose idea this was in the first place. No. I mean, I wasn't even jumping out all the time. They just scream at nothing. You know, they brush past the leaf and then they freak out. Then a little further on, we turned our torches off again and let our eyes adapt to the darkness. When we found the luminous dots in a bush, yeah, a bit of an anticlimax. Is that it? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're all expecting. They're worms that glow, after all. I don't know if the girls were expecting some sort of magical experience, like mystical, fairy-like creatures. We were in Franz Joseph, we were not in Narnia. We headed back to the bar, but Susie, Annabelle and James decided to check out the hot pools. I stayed at the bar and had a chat to Louise, who was also a lone campervan driver. But I bet she didn't have a wild white stallion like me. I'm still referring to the bus, by the way. I'm not calling myself a wild white stallion. But, you know, if the cap fits and all that. She probably had a decent vehicle that actually worked properly. We pondered on the idea of going convoy, heading south, but she wanted to hang on in Franz Joseph another day, and she wondered if I was interested in staying on too. In my opinion, I'd tick this box now, and it was time to move on. I wasn't sure what else there was to do around here. Franz Joseph was quite a small place. Susie, James and Annabelle came back as the pools were closing. We drank, joked and played pool. I had a real good banter with James, top bloke. There was also a bit of flirting from Susie and Louise as the drink flowed. I was wondering, you know, if my luck was in. Nah, it wasn't. As the night was drawing to a close, there was a girl about 18 years old in the bar who was completely wasted. And there were about 6 lads manhandling her, soaking her with drinks, pulling ice down her top and shorts, and, you know, it was inappropriate behaviour. They were leering and, like hyenas, starting to get a bit touchy, and it was uncomfortable to see. You could just sense that this could get out of hand. James and I would look at each other as if to say, what's that all about? Then Annabelle would look at us, clearly uncomfortable, and we grew more and more unsettled by it. Yeah, that doesn't look right. I don't like the look of that. What should we do? I don't know, but I don't feel comfortable leaving her. We were wondering whether we should say something and step in. What should we do? And then Annabelle said, well, shall I say something? And then James said, well, that would probably be a better idea because you're a woman, less threatening. So Annabelle went over and asked the girl if she was okay and if she wanted us to walk her home. It was better that Annabelle did it because it didn't seem at all threatening to the lads there. Whereas if James or I had stepped in, as they'd been drinking, who knows what could have happened. Annabelle had also done the right thing in asking the girl directly, giving her an opportunity to get out of the situation, rather than challenging the lads directly, you know, and having a go at them. Still, I stood by with a pool cue in hand just in case they did try to kick off.
Ooh,
You're hard, showing off.
Now, look, I'm not trying to come across as, oh, look, he's some kind of hard man or anything. No, I'm not doing that. I don't want to fight. I don't want any trouble. I'm quite a passive kind of bloke. But if you find yourself in a situation where you've got to defend yourself, do what you've got to do to stop the threat.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, I'm hard, Bruce Lee.
Now, the young girl said she didn't want to leave. Awkward silence amongst the lads when Annabelle asked. But I guess that some people don't want to be helped sometimes. Maybe she felt like she was getting some nice attention. I mean, if only she could see what we could. But it highlights to me what good people James and Annabelle were to want to help and not just stand by and let that go on. They felt compelled to help and stepped in. If only there were more people like them in the world. So we all left the bar to head to our beds for the night. I walked with Louise and Susie to their hostel that was on the way and wished them all the best. Then continued to the camper van site with James and Annabelle. The bus was toasty, having had the heating on all evening to dry out my camera, which was now dry and had started to work again. Thank God. Fingers crossed, no permanent damage done. I was still a little bit apprehensive as to whether it would still work or not. So I wrote my journal as the bus started to cool down quickly with the heating now switched off. I sprayed myself with insect repellent, preparing myself for the possibility that I could be a second course for whatever had feasted on me the night before. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking that I'd been told that travelling, you're going travelling, it's going to be full of, horny hot female backpackers. It's going to be one big shag fest. Young, free, single chap, with a bus and a guitar. Come on, surely. Surely. Well, here I was, on a shitty bus that didn't work properly, coughing on the fumes of insect repellent, feeling a bit nippy and getting my pasty, bitten to shit, skinny arse into my thermal underwear, hoping to have a bite-free night. Look out, ladies. There's a half-eaten thermal underwear stud possibly coming your way. Pathetic. Like I said, I had to laugh. I wasn't that tired, and it was way after 1 a.m. when I finally got to sleep. What a day. Yeah.
Do you like that?
4 key things from today, I think. Firstly, obviously, the glacier. I mean, what a great experience. That was climbing a glacier, being on a glacier. You just cannot get your head around the perspective of this thing. The sheer size of it is immense. When you don't have any kind of man-made object to be able to compare it to, like if you could see a bus or something parked in front of the glacier, you'd have you'd have some sort of concept of scale. But no, you haven't got a clue, and you think, oh, that's not far away. You've still got 1.5 miles to get to it, and even when you're on it, you still can't comprehend the sheer size of it until you suddenly see a little dot, and you think, well, they don't look like they should be that far away, but actually they're a dot climbing out of the little crevice and climbing into another one. It's crazy. In the last house share I was in, my housemate Chris, who was a photographer, he went to New Zealand whilst I was living with him, and he climbed the glacier. And some of the shots that he took, he got printed, like huge prints, and he actually had them exhibited. They were really good photos showing all the jagged crevices and the deep blues and whatnot. Yeah, I remember I went to the exhibition to see his stuff. It was great. The other thing that's worth mentioning is my gross overestimation of things. I mean, what was I thinking with that water? What was I thinking with the belly buster breakfast? 10 minutes to eat a belly buster breakfast. Ridiculous. I think what it probably was I was expecting some sort of physical challenge. Right, I was thinking, right, I'm going to climb this glacier. I'm going to have crampons on. It's going to be serious. I need to make sure I'm hydrated. I need to make sure I've got plenty of food in my belly that I can handle it. Didn't need all that in the end. It wasn't that bad, but yeah. Making friends, enjoying company. You know, it was really nice to meet other Brits and to have a bit of a banter with them. It was like a bit of home from home, really, in a way. Really nice experience. Just several strangers, just getting on. That little bit of familiarity, I suppose, brought us together. But it was really nice to have that company. No romantic encounters. Just want to clarify, I wasn't desperate, by the way. I probably sound like I was desperate. I wasn't. What?
You know, you said the pigeons don't eat that food.
Well, they will now. It's on the floor.
We know your time is valuable. Thank you for holding. Someone will be with you as soon as possible.
Hello. So this is editing Dan. Just chipping in here. Sorry about that little interruption there. Little insight into what life is like now. Getting shouted up the stairs from the half with a pigeon update. So I thought I'd leave that in. It's quite funny, isn't it? So yeah, back to the show. Finally, that downpour. What the bloody hell was that? I mean, that was insane. And of course, it was like something out of a film. Just imagine a big wall of grey just creeping up the canyon towards us. And you think, oh shit, what is that? Yeah. And of course, my camera gear got all soaked because of it. But I guess it was a sign of growth, maybe. I don't know. Independence. It was a real shift in the way that I would deal with it. I was really quite easygoing about it. Well, you know, if my camera doesn't work, I'll just have to get another one. Simple as that. That's it. No point stressing out about it. Just got to deal with it. And that was a real turning point in this trip for me. A real sense of growth from that. So have you ever climbed a glacier? What was it like for you? How did you find it? Have you been to Franz Joseph? Have you ever had something bad happen and found that actually you were able to deal with it in a much more composed way than you thought you'd be able to deal with it? Leave a comment somewhere on YouTube or WordPress, or email me at onlyaslonely@gmail.com. You can also send any questions to that email as well if you have them. And yet another reminder that you can see photos and clips, tracks from this podcast on onlyaslonely.wordpress.com. Stephen Bartlett is the guy who does a very good podcast called Diary of a CEO, worth checking out. He says this thing in all of his podcasts where he goes, I hope no one's listening, but if you are, keep it to yourself. It's obviously some sort of reverse psychology thing going on there. It's all right for him, you know. If no one does listen, he still interviews some very interesting people. Still a multi-millionaire, you know. Still got a crew of people to help him do it all. Whereas for me, it's just me in the same office where I work Monday to Friday. It takes bloody hours to do one episode. So bollocks to that reverse psychology, mate. I hope someone is listening. And no, don't keep this to yourself. Please like it, share it, subscribe to it and all that, because, you know, it does mean more than you know. And frankly, rated as number 210, it's embarrassing, isn't it? Right, that's enough from me. Join me in the next episode as I become part of a convoy and there's a risk of a natural disaster. Thanks for your company. I'll see you next time.
Spinal.